Greetings, Talvan. Welcome to another episode of the Puretide Program, and today we're going to be discussing Mont'ka Detachment with the new stealth suit changes. So first off, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank you all. Your engagement's been amazing over the last couple of videos. Lots of comments, lots of likes, and a fair few people subscribing to the channel. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. It helps the channel grow, and it helps me engage and find out kind of where everyone's at within their Tau journey. So to follow on from the last two episodes, this time we're going to be looking at the Mont'ka Detachment. Now, I think Mont'ka is well situated. I don't think Mont'ka cares as much for the stealth suit changes because actually I think we've been a bit lazy. And by that, I mean that we've just been relying on our stealth suits to do stealth suit things. I'd like reroll ones to hit, ones to win for 80 points for a 3-man unit. Yes, please, I'll take 2, maybe 3 of them. But we never stopped to think, hang on a minute, do we actually need this in this detachment? And the answer is no, you don't. You genuinely do not need the rerolls to do maximum damage for your units in Mont'ka. And the reason for this is because, one, your detachment is giving you lethal hits. So the lethal hits gets around the wound step because when you roll 6s to hit, they just automatically wound. And we have a lot of units that can pump out a vast quantity of shots and get around like certain stat checks. And what I mean by that is that if you imagine in a Kion list, you want your big gun to connect with the big thing that you're shooting at. So a railgun tackles a toughness 11 tank. A Riptide at strength 10 will tackle a T9 vehicle. Okay, you need those to connect in order to down that target. So therefore the reroll ones to hit, ones to win can really come into play to guarantee the kill. But in Mont'ka, your small arms fire can do, if not the same, or sometimes more damage if you throw enough dice at the target. Because if you have rerolls to hit, and we'll get on to how you can do that in Mont'ka in a second, but you can just kind of bypass the wound step. I don't care what your toughness is. I'm just going to fish for those lethals. I'm going to get in those lethals to go straight to your saving throw. Now, Mont'ka, you have data sheets like the Fire Knife Crisis teams that have innate rerolls if you're targeting something at full starting strength. You have Iron Hammerheads and Skyrays that have their built-in reroll. Skyrays are twin-linked in the wound step, but they've also got the free hit or wound roll. And obviously we're not going to be using it for the wound step. We're going to be using it for the hit step. And then Iron Hammerheads get +1 to hit versus vehicles. So 9 times that's need to be hit on 2s, as long as they've not smoked. And then obviously there's a stratagem that can grant you full rerolls to hit as well. So those are just two options for us to maximize the amount of kind of shots that we're throwing at a target to connect, and we're doing it in the hit step rather than the wound step. So the stealth suit's buff to give you reroll 1s to wound isn't exactly coming in as clutch as, say, what it would in Kion or EPC. Now let's have a look at the detachment itself, and we'll go through a few data sheets in detail, and then we'll get onto the list that I've created for you today. So Mont'ka, as we know, it's all about the killing blow. The first 3 turns. First, second, and third battle round, all Tau Empire models from your army have the assault ability. During the first, second, and third battle round, when a unit is guided, its ranged weapons have the lethal hits. So that's what I was referring to in terms of where our damage is coming from, and it's coming in the first 3 turns. Now, in terms of enhancements, we all know that we've got some really good ones available to us. The key one that you should be looking at is the Strike Swiftly. So Scout move is incredibly important whether you're going first or second. If you're going first, you can use it aggressively. Going second, you could use it defensively or still aggressively, depending on the terrain sets that you're playing on. And the bearer of this enhancement can grant 2 friendly units within 6 Scout Move 6 ability. And this can be used on things like Riptides or Skyrays, Hammerheads, Crisis teams, just to name a few. And also, you can bestow Scout ability on transport. Now, there's various ways that we can put units inside transports to grant it Scout Move naturally. Like, for example, if you put a Pathfinder team that has Scout Move 7 on its data sheet, if you embark them into a Devilfish, it also grants the Devilfish Scout Move 7. So there is a world where you could have, say, I don't know, let's just say 3 Devilfishes in your list. One of them has a Pathfinder team in, and 2 of them have Breaches in. Now, if you've got an enhancement on a nearby character, you could then suddenly grant the 2 Devilfish that have the Breaches in, Scout Move 6, and then the one that has the Pathfinder team in, Scout Move 7. So that's quite a hefty scout move that you can really utilize for forward pressure and aggression early doors. And considering that our detachment is all around speed and being the first one to strike and dominating the board control early, then you can see how this can come together with this enhancement of strike swiftly. And you can use it, obviously, that was just an example on transports, but you can use it on Riptide. So a Riptide scout moving 6, then auto advancing 6 with the stratagem, and then moving 10. So that Riptide's going 22 inches from the get-go if you go first. So there's lots of ways that we can use this enhancement to our benefit. And the other enhancement that is taken is the Strategic Conqueror, which is a Tower Empire model, start of the first battle round before the turn begins, select one objective mark on the battlefield, friendly Tower Empire models in range of that objective, add one to the model's objective control characteristic. This is fantastic because you can use it to make Pathfinders, for example, OC2 rather than OC1, providing that they're on the objective marker that you selected. So you can use it defensively to secure your own expansion objective, which is what we refer to the objective that is closest to our deployment zone or defensive position to fortify it. Or you could be choosing an objective that's closer to your opponent's deployment zone, the one that you're wanting to deny or take from them. So there's various ways of using this enhancement to your benefit. And something to note on this enhancement, it's irrelevant of battle shock. So if you fail your battle shock, you're obviously 0, but if you're on the objective that you've bestowed the Strategic Conqueror on, you then gain an additional objective control. So your battle shock goes down to 0, and then you add the multiplier, add 1, so you're back to OC1. So it's really cool. And I think these two enhancements are definitely the go-to. The example of Mont'ka, if you have the 10-point spare, being able to do the Mont'ka Detachment rule on the 4th turn is kind of handy, but it's situational. And I think if you just do enough damage in the early stages of the game, you won't need it. But if you have 10-point spare, I can see the benefit of taking it. So in terms of the stratagems, so like I gave you an example in the Kion video, I wanted to talk about some key stratagems that we need to be building our lists around. And no doubt, it's all going to be about speed. So aggressive mobility, a 1 CP stratagem, you just auto-advance. No need to roll for it, just a flat 6 on advance. Fantastic for transports, especially the Devilfish that can advance and you can drop out your infantry units. So having a Devilfish go auto 18, drop out the guys within 3, that's a 21-inch threat range. And then let's say if it's breaches, they've got a 10-inch range gun. So that's a total of 21 plus 10, that's 31 inches. Now, if you happen to apply Scout Move to this Devilfish, then you increase it by 6 because the Devilfish will Scout 6, then move 18, so that's 24, get out 3, 27, and then you got a range gun of the breaches of 10 inches, so that's a 37-inch threat range. So pretty decent in terms of this. And when you need to react to the battle to see how things are going, whether your attack is going swimmingly and you just want to really push that attack further into the opponent's deployment zone or maybe on their home field objective, it's great. But sometimes if you need to kind of respond to an enemy threat on your own side of the board, your expansion objective, you can obviously use the aggressive ability to pivot round and go and defend key areas of the board. So again, a very good stratagem, something that you should definitely be building into your list. So you should build it in to your planning. Then you've got the pinpoint counteroffensive. This is a phenomenal stratagem. This is what I'm talking about in terms of the efficiency of Mont'ka. One Tower Empire unit, excluding Kroot units from your army that was just destroyed, you can use a stratagem on that unit even though it was just destroyed. Until the end of the battle, each time a Tower Empire unit, excluding Kroot, from your army makes an attack that targets the enemy unit that has just destroyed your unit, you can reroll the hit roll. And it's phase, any phase. So somebody kills you in the shooting phase. Brilliant. I don't like you. 4 rerolls to hit for the rest of the game. Someone kills you in the charge phase, aka maybe they got some snazzy little mortals that they can do, and maybe they charge some JPIs in and go, you've got one Fire Warrior left. I'm going to go in with my JPIs. I've done one mortal. That's unit. There you go. Okay, cool. Well, 4 rerolls to hit against because the charge phase is a phase. And then the combat phase, when they slice you up and dice you and hit you with hammers, then cool, you killed something in the combat phase. Well done. 4 rerolls to hit. So if you manage your CP economy correctly, you could be putting 4 rerolls to hit on multiple things in multiple phases. So again, a very powerful stratagem, and then it gets around this whole need of having to have rerolls with like Shadow Sun or Stealth Suits. And if you use this correctly, you could be having tokens on key enemy units that you can just 4 rerolls to hit, therefore fishing for the lethals that you get within the first 3 turns. Other stratagems, focus fire. Sometimes our units can lack a little bit of punch when it comes to the armor penetration. This particular stratagem allows you to pick 2 Tau Empire units and 1 enemy unit. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in either of your units makes an attack, you can improve the armor penetration by 1 for both these units. So, for example, you could have a missile finite team that's a little bit lackluster when it comes to the AP. It's only AP 1. Damage 2 is great, but it's only AP 1. You could choose this and an Iron Hammerhead, for example. Then the finite missile team is AP 2. And then the Iron Hammerhead goes from overcharging, assuming that you are AP 2, strength 8, flat 3 damage, goes to AP 3. And these 2 units into one target can absolutely do the Lord's work. And if you factor in the fact that this unit that you're shooting at has already killed something, and you granted the pinpoint counteroffensive on them for 4 rerolls to hit, suddenly that's a scary combo that you can, throw upon your opponent at a click of a button. So this one is a really good stratagem. Then the other ones are very situational. I find that the combat debarkation is really good for things like Pathfinders or breaches that are in the Delphish that maybe, talk about the breaches, if your opponent's not on the objective, you obviously won't get the reroll wounds that the breaches have if you're shooting at something that's on an objective. Whereas if they're slightly off the objective to prevent you from having that powerful boost to your efficiency, then you can just go 1 CP, I get 4 rerolls to wound as long as I've disembarked from that transport this turn. And then think about other units like Pathfinders. Pathfinders have got an absurd amount of shooting and some quality shooting as well with the iron rifles. If you can then suddenly go, well, my Pathfinders are getting out the Delphish, they're self-guiding, and I'm going to give them 4 rerolls to wound. That package becomes less of a utility / like low medium damage to actually a threat that the opponent has to respect. Again, if you factor in the fact that you might be shooting at a target that's got 4 rerolls to hit on them, suddenly that Pathfinder team is punching way higher than its points value. And then we have the Pulse Onslaught 2 CP, very situational, and often than not, it doesn't come into play. But if one Tau Empire infantry unit has just shot, as long as it's excluding monsters or vehicles that it's hit by 1 or more of those attacks, you can make it -2 move, advance, and charge rolls. And then 2 CP counter defense system can come into play if you keep your CP ticking over in your opponent's turn. So if you have 2 CP in your opponent's turn, if they're shooting something like a Riptide, Transports, Hammerhead, Crisis Suits, you can subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack. Pretty good defensively, to be honest, but you need to factor in this versus your opponent. Okay, so if there's lots of damage 2s out there when they're shooting, this is a great stratagem because you can reduce it to damage 1. And it can keep your Riptides or your Crisis Suits alive a lot longer. So I find that mainly the first section, the first 3, the pinpoint counteroffensive, aggressive ability, and focus fire are the ones that you'll be using the most, and then counterfire defense system, and maybe the combat debarkation if it's needed. Okay, so that's a little bit about the detachment itself and some of the kind of like strategies that I'm building into the list based off what this detachment does. Let's have a look at some of the key observer units you want to be looking at. Now, I might not have included these in all of the lists, but I have got them built into other lists that I've done over in my Discord for the Patreons that are paying subscriptions, so bear that in mind, please. But ones that I'll be looking at are Darkstrider, because again, Darkstrider is fantastic. He's a solo piece if needed. Can be in a Devilfish, like I mentioned in the Kion video. It can obviously be an observer for the units that are coming out, therefore meaning that the Pathfinders will get lethal. Because the Pathfinders are great for being self-sufficient. Their rule: each time a model in this unit makes an attack that targets their spotted unit, improve the ballistic skill of the attack by 1, and the attack has the ignores cover. But they're not counted as guided because it's a self-fulfilling role, okay? So they're never guided if they're using their own ability, but if they're suddenly guided by, say, Darkstrider that's in the transport with them, they'll be getting lethals as well, which can be a really good force multiplier for Pathfinders that are suddenly getting out of a Devilfish. If you have the CP, the maximum CP you could spend on them could be like 2. You could give them full rerolls to wound. You could give them an additional AP if they combine fire against a target with another unit. So meaning that iron rifles go to AP 3 and the pulse carbines go to AP 1. Then you get full rerolls to wound, and you could potentially have full rerolls to hit if, for example, you're shooting a target that's had the pinpoint counteroffensive put on them. So you can see how having little solo characters that can guide these units can be really good in Mont'ka. So if you are look at the Firesight Marksman, look at Darkstrider, those are my kind of like key little tech pieces, but you heard me talk a lot about them in the Cairn video, and the same applies here in Mont'ka because it gives you the lethals, whereas in Cairn it give you the sustained if you're doing it from 3, 4, 5. But with Mont'ka, you're going to want to use these units early because it's all about doing your damage in the first 3 turns. So having units to guide these, units like Pathfinders is going to be crucial. Firesight Marksman already mentioned, but just to note, in the Mont'ka Detachment, they get an assault, which is huge because they're only movement 6. So being able to advance gives you extra reach when it comes to getting those angles to be an observer onto key targets. And also, if you're in a transport, again, you can move up the board a lot faster than you would do normally if you were on foot. Then we've got Shadow Sun can still be used in Mont'ka. Fantastic. Reroll 1s to hit. You can, you're not taking stealth suits. So I still would like the reroll 1s to hit. So you could take Shadow Sun, 100 points. And her with Assault is actually pretty good. She's a lone op. She can get to places, movement 10. So she could be auto-advancing 6 if you wanted to. So that's 16 inches, providing that aura around the board. Pretty good, right? So I think Shadow Sun definitely has a place in Mont'ka. So I wouldn't be writing her off immediately. And some CP generation is nice, especially if you roll those 5+ when you're spending stratagems on her or around her. Solo Ethereals. I think Solo Ethereals are fantastic in Mont'ka because you do need the CP to keep your Mont'ka train running. And if you're maybe not a fan of having to kind of be a little bit more cagey and you want to just kind of use aggressive stratagems after aggressive stratagems and just keep the train rolling, then great. But you'll need probably more than one of them. And for 50 points tax, they're not that bad. You could have 2 of them, that sets you back 100 points, but then you roll 2 rolls to see if you can get a CP back. So rather than a 50-50, it becomes like 75% chance. So again, like Ethereals, you can give a marker drone, shield drone, they're on a hover drone, so they're moving 10. Again, really kind of fast when you factor in the fact that they can advance and get into places and also just be like backfield screeners and just play those angles as and when you need them. So again, 2 Ethereals, 1 to 2 Ethereals I can see in Mont'ka List 100%. Already talked about Pathfinders. Skyray, same thing as I talked about in the Cairn Detachment. They are very good. And I think the one thing to note about Skyrays is that in Mont'ka, you want something that's a little bit more durable, that can sit at the back and guide either late game or early game without revealing some of your other pieces. And I think the Skyray, even if it's selected as an observer, then if you're targeting something that's got the pinpoint counter-offensive on there, then you don't really need the Skyray to be guided because, okay, look, let's factor in the fact that you're shooting in something that's got full rerolls to hit, assuming it doesn't smoke. You'll be hitting on 4s, full rerolls to hit, so you'll get 2 out of 3. And then your missiles are twin-linked anyway, so you're going to be rerolling those. So you're going to get 2 through. And okay, AP3, they'll have cover because you're not guiding it, so it goes to AP2. Still puts most tanks on 5-ups. If it's got a 2-up save, it's on a 4-up. But if you really wanted to, you could do the extra AP stratagem for a Skyray and something else. So then that kind of gives it AP4, which means with cover goes back to its normal AP3. So it's not the end of the world if you're not guiding the Skyray, but the Skyray can be a durable piece that can guide for you. So I do think the Skyray is good for 140 points to give you that durable observer unit when maybe your Pathfinders have taken the brunt of the slapback from your enemy. So those are some of the guiders that I would look to include in Mont'ka. I wouldn't necessarily go down the Star Scythe route because the Flamers aren't really utilizing the lethal hits. And I think if you're taking the burst cannons, you want to be guiding them. You don't really want them to be observers. So I don't think the Star Scythe Flamer unit has a place in Mont'ka. It can definitely work, especially if you're leaning heavily into like the deep strikes, being able to kind of like deep strike and get that angle. But unlike Retcada, it doesn't have the 6-inch deep strike, so people can easily screen 9 inches. So, excuse me. When we look at the list that I've created, so let me just load up the list and then we'll go into some of the selection, some of the reasons why I've selected the units that I have, and I'll give you some alternative options within the list that I'm about to show you because there's a couple of things that you can chop and change to your liking, and I think that's really important when it comes to building a list that's designed for you, not necessarily just copying and pasting one that I'm providing you. So give me a second while I flip a few screens. Okay. So we have Mont'ka. Now, I've gone with a couple of characters here. I've not gone Shadow Sun, and I've not gone Dark Strider. There can be places for them, and I'll give you some options later. But I've gone with banking in as many kind of like rerolls as I possibly can, and data sheets that have got their own ability to have a reroll here, a reroll there, that kind of thing, okay? So I've gone with the Enforcer Commanders. Now, the Enforcer Commanders have got 4 missile pods, and they're going to be attached to a missile finite team. And the reason this is quite simple. My missile finite team is going to all have missiles. So 30-inch range, movement 10, I can advance them, so it makes up for some of the lack of speed when you say, go, well, aren't you going to attach cold stars to the crashes? Well, yes, okay, that's obviously faster because you're movement 12 then, and then the assault, you could auto advance got 18. Okay, fine, 18, brilliant. And then a movement 10 with auto advance is 16. So actually, I'm losing 2 inches. And you've got to think about the terrain format you're playing on. So WTC, I could probably definitely see maybe changing one of those enforcers to a cold star to get around some of the harder angles. And maybe the new UKTC ones do need a cold star just to get onto those 5-inch by 5-inch plates. But we're going to be going into that on separate videos later down the line in December. But as it stands right now, I've found huge success with an enforcer equipped to the missile finite, because that unit alone, if you like separate the shots, you've got 8 shots on the commander, who hits on 2s when guided, so therefore you are always going to fish for lethals with full rerolls, assuming that you're shooting either at a unit that has got like full starting strength or a unit that's got pinpoint counteroffensive on. So he goes, I'll pick up 8 dice, I'll roll them, I'll pick up anything that's not a 6 and re-roll it, because you might as well. You hit on 2s with rerolls, just fish for 6s. And then the Crisis team has 12 shots at 7-1-2, that again, your full rerolls, you're going to be fishing for those lethals sometimes, and you could really just kind of go, well, I might be wounding this target on 5, so I might as well kind of reroll to get as many lethals as possible, and then see what I get in the wound step. So again, emphasis on the rerolls to hit rather than focusing on the wounds, all right? Because it obviously lethals bypasses the wound step. So I've got 2 of these units, and the commander's on with a marker drone, shield drone. Simple reason is, if I've taken some incoming fire and maybe I've lost the crisis suits, then at least he can still guide for my rest of my army. Now, in terms of a durability point of view, this unit is actually way more durable than you think, because the Enforcer bestows Armor of Contempt, so reduce incoming AP but on ranged only by 1, which is effectively what AOC does. But the difference is it's not one activation, it's for the entire ranged turn or the shooting phase. Now, obviously, he still needs to be leading a unit, so if they shoot and kill 3 crisis suits, the next activation just on him will not benefit from the reduction of AP. But I found that this unit is actually really durable and needs a hell of a lot of damage to go in to clear them. Because if you think about this, they're on a 3-up armor save. You're going to have cover because you're going to position your unit accordingly. And if your opponent hits you with AP 3, okay, you reduce it to AP 2 just from the Enforcer leading the unit, then you've got cover, and it's only AP 1. And that puts your crisis suits on a 4-up save, which is the equivalent of having a Sunforge team with a 4-up invul. And if they hit you with AP2, then AOC and cover, they're on 3-up saves. So you can see how this unit can actually be really durable. And my Fire Knife Crisis team have shield drone, gun drone each. So they've each got 5 wounds, which really adds to that obnoxious kind of wound amount to make your opponent really hate shooting into you, because damage 2s, they're going to be wasting some efficiency. Damage 3, they're going to be wasting. And obviously damage 1, well, whatever. Like, you're not going to be having high AP, I'm going to be on 3-ups. So that's that little package there. In terms of the guiding units, now this is where I've started to really like having the 2 Firesight Marksmen. One to be a caddy for Strike Swiftly, and one to be the Strategic Conqueror caddy. So these are the enhancements that I talked about earlier in this video. So I've got 2 of those. And the great thing is about these, they can just exist, they're not get interacted with, and they can just guide. So I'm not revealing like Pathfinder's stealth suits to get shot back. Or I can just go, this firing lane here is mine, you can't interact with my Firesight Marksman, and I can just guide them to my heart's content. And then if you wanted to, you can put them in transports to help that little bit of a push if you wanted to with, say, Pathfinders or Breaches, because I'm going to give you a variant here where you could swap out a few things and put in some Breaches if you want. So again, Firesight Marksman, fantastic. Access to Assault is really going to help them get to places and guide your most important pieces. In terms of infantry, now I've not put any breaches in here because I simply think Pathfinders do a better job than breaches in Mont'ka because they're self-sufficient and it's all about creating that efficiency within units to not have to rely on something else allowing it to do its thing. So Pathfinder's great. 30 Pathfinders, 2 with recon, 1 with grav. Brilliant. All iron rifles, gun drones, the whole lot. It's got all the shots. Let's go. Then I've got the 2 missile finite teams, and remember that their rerolls are full rerolls to hit if you target something at full starting strength, and reroll 1s if the unit that you're shooting at is below starting strength. And again, if you're shooting something that with full rerolls with a pinpoint counteroffensive, you're always going to be rerolling, so you're going to be fishing for those lethals all day long. And max shots, 20 shots in total with the commander and the fire knives, plus the gun drones going in. It's a lot of DACA, and it's got good range as well. Now, to follow up a few things. So this is where you can start to swap and change the list a little bit. So I've got 2 Devilfish to go with the 30 Pathfinders because I think transports are fantastic. I think you need a delivery mechanism to get them to where they need to be, and you can use them very aggressively early, like 1 aggressively with a scout move 7, go and send, dig out something that's trying to get a foothold on their expansion objective, or you want to jail the opponent. The Devilfish allow you to do so. And then I've got 2 Riptides. So I'm not going with 3 because I think 3 Riptides is a little bit of a waste in Mont'ka because I think the 3rd one just stands around and doesn't really do much. So 2 is great because they can benefit from the strike swiftly and you can use them aggressively on a flank with, say, Pathfinders or whatever, and just go and be your kind of like alpha or stage the 2 Riptides together and then push out. So I think 2 Riptides is a good amount. Then I've gone with 2 single piranhas. I think these are fantastic in Mont'ka. Fast, annoying, scout move 9, got a couple of seekers on there, got a fusion blaster, the battle shock abilities, so they can really help pin your opponent in, block them, cause interference, and also be great caddies to, oh no, you killed the 60-point piranha. Well, I'm going to do pinpoint counteroffensive on you now. You kill the piranha, good for you, buddy. And now the rest of my force is rerolling hit rolls against you. So piranha's great for 60 points. And then I've gone with 3 hammerheads, 1 railgun, and then 2 ion cannon hammerheads with the seekers and the smart missiles. So I've got in this list, I've got the railgun simply because sometimes you just do need that piece that can go dead, dead, dead. And I think 3 iron cannon hammerheads is a bit overkill. And I wanted a bit of quantity, so I've got quantity from my fire knives. I've got quantity of D6 plus 3 blast shots from my hammerhead, the lethals, the seekers, and then I've got a railgun for that dedicated. I want that tank dead. So this is where you can swap and change some of the things in the list. So as overall, you've got your railgun hammerhead to deal with, and the 2 riptides to kind of tackle some of the tougher targets. You've got the piranhas that can punch up with the seekers. All the transports have seekers. So again, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 seeker missiles. And then in terms of dealing with like horde style armies like Admech and World Eaters, you've got the finite teams, you've got the iron hammerheads, you've got the pathfinders. So you can start to see how it can tackle each profile that's presented to you. So if you wanted to swap and change around the list, the first thing I do is if you want breaches and you feel that you do need a few extra infantry units, then guess what? Drop 1 enforcer, drop a finite team, and that's 200 points. 200 points is just insert 2 breacher teams. Done. All right? Maybe you don't have another enforcer command, maybe you don't have another crash team. That's fine. Take 1 because you can still use it as deep strike threats, rapid ingress, that kind of thing, and you just have an extra 2 units of breachers. And because you've got the 2 devilfish, you can play quite clever games with like in and out of Devilfish. So Pathfinders starts in the Devilfish, give it scout. Pathfinders get out, go and do their thing. Breachers advance into the Devilfish, and then you have another wave. So there's a lot of things you can do there. So you could do it that way. That's one option. So I see a lot of people taking a Vespid team because Vespid are not Kroot. Shock, I know. And Vespid can trigger the pinpoint counteroffensive. So they kill the 5 Vespid, which is easy to do if they want to. Then you can go pinpoint, full rerolls to hit against you. So if you want to do this, the simple thing is you drop 1 iron hammerhead to a skyray, which saves you 5 points, and you drop a piranha. So you have 1 piranha, 1 Vespid team, and you have 1 skyray instead of the railgun hammerhead, and you have 2 iron cannon hammerheads. Nice and simple. You can just do that. If you wanted to say take another Riptide, maybe. I don't think you should. To be honest, I'm not gonna recommend that. Because you can work it out if you really wanted to. You could drop an iron hammerhead, that's 145, drop a piranha, that's 205, and then you've got 15 points left in your list. And then that could be an upgrade and enforcer to a cold start. There you are. If you wanted a 3rd Riptide, that's what you would do. If you wanted to maybe put Shadowsoul on the list, the only way that I can see you doing this from this list that I'm providing you today is you drop an Iron Hammerhead. So you drop... I'd probably drop one of the Hammerheads, depending on your meta, so that's 1, 4, 5. You put in Shadowsoul, that leaves you with 45 points. So 45 points could be a single Crutox Rider, or what you could do is 45. You could drop... Look at this effectively. We could go drop one Piranha, 60. Drop a Hammerhead, that's 205. And then you could put in Shadowsun and a Breach Team, for example. That's something you could do. So I would probably, in that case, drop an Iron Hammerhead, drop a Piranha, 205. You put in Shadowsun, 100 points. You got 105 points left, and then you put in a Breach Team. That won't really affect the archetype of the list. It just means you have one less vehicle, because you do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vehicles plus the Riptide, so it can kind of get a little bit clustered in your deployment. But remember, a lot of this, a lot of the power that comes from Mont'ka is using the scout moves to get out of your deployment zone to stage aggressively. So I think this list has a stable here, and I will share it in the description below. Just offers you everything you need in Mont'ka, and you've got a couple of options there if you wanted to kind of like deviate from this list. And I've given you a couple of ones, one with Shadowsun and one with Breaches. Okay. All right. So I think the last thing to kind of like mention here is that these are some of the lists that I'm just creating for you, an audience, to kind of be inspired by and have a look at, you know, your own list and think, am I making the right choices? Do I like what I'm seeing here? Can I kind of incorporate some of my lists that I'm showing you into yours? Absolutely. But if you want to kind of have a look a bit more into some of the lists that I've been creating, you'll see here in my Discord in the Commander Puretides list, which is available from Pathfinder tier onwards, I've started to create a fair few lists for people post stealth suit changes. And it's not just like one list. For example, if I click on Mont'ka, I've got many that I've created here to give staples for people to actually kind of go, all right, well, let's have a look at what he's doing. Let's have a look at how I can kind of tailor mine. And I've done it for every single detachment. So if you are interested in getting my lists, then come over to the Puretide program. The description below has the links, and you can sign up as a Pathfinder tier and you'll get access to that. And obviously the other tiers are self-explanatory. It gives you a description of what you can get for the money that you're spending, and a lot of them comes with additional benefits like extra content and extra calls that you can participate in and extra channels as well. In terms of the Mont'ka, you'll notice that if we go on detachments here, like I've shown you, let's make sure it's showing on the screen here. Yes, it is. Perfect. Like I showed you in the account, we're having plenty of discussions in Mont'ka, and people are discussing their own lists and theories and things that they're trying and testing, and questions for me in terms of like my list, how to use certain units, etc., etc. So there's lots of like information, even like people sharing their deployment plans and what they're doing to kind of like stage and attack certain areas of the board. Plenty of activity going on here, and I honestly cannot rate it enough. It's amazing seeing this community come together, support each other, and talk about their experiences, the things that are working, the things that are not, and coming together to solve it all for the greater good. And I love it, absolutely love it. So it's a hive of activity, and you definitely want to be part of that. So, guys, that's it for the Mont'ka call. Hope you enjoyed these videos that I'm doing. I'm obviously going to do a lot more. There's going to be, the next up is going to be Retaliation Card Ray, and it's going to be EPC, and then Auxiliary and Crute. So they're going to be coming to you probably start of like next week, because I've got their big prestige event this weekend, so I'm not going to get a chance to do any more videos. But hopefully this is enough to keep you engaged. And please, like I said before, comment below. Tell me the things that you're experimenting with, what's working, what's not, and I'll do my best to go through each of those comments and respond as and when I can. But for now, thank you very much for your support. Keep doing the greater good work, and good luck on the battlefield.